Hare Krishna. So last time we have started the third section of fourth chapter of transcendental knowledge. The third section is Krishna, the creator and culmination of all paths. So in the 11th verse, we discussed how Krishna reciprocates with the worshipper's mood. Ye yathamam prapadyante tam taiva bhajamiham. So because atheist person doesn't want Krishna, he hides himself. And the devotee wants to see Krishna, so he reveals himself. So in this way, based on the devotee's, a person's approach towards Krishna, he reciprocates with him. Then 12th verse, we discussed how different people worship devatas because they want quick results. Because Krishna takes some time to give the results, because he wants to purify the heart of devotees before giving the results. Then 13th verse, we discuss elaborately about Chatur Varnam Maya Srishtam, how Krishna has created 4 Varnas and based on Guna and Karma, qualities and activities. So in this way, he is impartial creator. He is not responsible. And then 14th verse, we discussed Namam Karmani Limpanti, how work doesn't affect him. So although he is the creator of all these systems, but he is not under them. Neither he is bound ever by any reactions of his actions. He is always free from the reactions. So these were the verses we covered. And the 15th verse now, please recite.
Ravi Prabhu.
Yes, Vijay. Am I audible, Vijay?
Yes.
Evam gyatva kritam karma.
Evam yatva kritam karma.
Purvair api pamokshabhi.
Purvairapi
Suru karmaiva tasmatvam. Purvai purva taram kritam. Translation. All the liberated souls in ancient times acted with this understanding of my transcendental nature. Therefore, you should perform your duty, following in their footsteps.
So, again here Krishna is referring to previous acharyas, previous personalities. So this is one of the very important limb of bhakti, wherein Sato Vritte, as Srila Rupa Goswami mentioned, Sato Vritte means following in the footsteps of previous acharyas. Mahajanena Yogata Pantha. Again, same thing is mentioned. So Krishna time and again gives reference to previous acharyas, previous great souls, and inspires Arjun to follow in their footsteps, follow in their path. So in this way, in this verse also, Krishna is encouraging Arjun that many previous great souls, they understood this truth about me, that my activities, my birth are transcendental. I am never bound by karma. So by such understanding about me, then they did their work without desire. So, purport, Prabhupada says there are 2 classes of men. Some of them are full of polluted material things within their hearts, and some of them are materially free. So, people with material desires, people free from material desires. So now, Prabhupada says very wonderful point that Krishna consciousness is equally beneficial for both of these persons. Those who are full of material desires and those who are free from material desires. So Prabhupada says those who are full of dirty things can take to the line of Krishna consciousness for a gradual cleansing process following the regulative principles of devotional service. So those who have material desires, they can take to this process of Krishna consciousness, especially this karma yoga, and they become gradually free from material desires. Over the period of time, they will be cleansed, their heart will be cleansed. Those who are already free from material desires, those who are cleansed of material impurities, may continue to act in same Krishna consciousness so that others may follow their exemplary activities and thereby be benefited. So generally in the path of impersonalism, they say that we should follow the path till we get perfection. Once the perfection is achieved, then you give up the path. You don't have to follow the path at all. But in Krishna consciousness, it's not like that. The path is the process, and the means and the goal are the same. So even if one is perfected, still he continues to act in Krishna consciousness and does the devotional service. So devotional service is the means to cleanse the heart. But even after a heart being cleansed, the devotional service is also the same thing, the very life of a devotee. And that's how he continues to practice. Once His Holiness, what is his name? Gaur Krishna Das Goswami Maharaj, he was telling in one class that Krishna consciousness is like medicine for sadhakas and it's like auxiliary for siddhas. So just like sugarcane juice is the medicine for jaundice affected patient and it's a nectar for healthy person. So both have to take sugarcane juice. For both, the sugarcane juice is very beneficial. One who has got jaundice, he should take sugarcane juice to get cured. One who has not got jaundice, one who is very healthy, what he should do? He should also take sugarcane juice to relish it. So devotees who are pure, they relish. Pure devotees, they relish Krishna consciousness. And those who are not yet pure, it helps them to become pure by practice. So further Prabhupada says that that's why to retire from the activities of Krishna consciousness and sit aloof, making a show of Krishna consciousness is less important than actually engaging in the field of activities for the sake of Krishna. So rather than sitting aloof and just, trying to become like a Babaji, who is not pure-hearted, better to engage in the field of activities, perform your duty for sake of Krishna, act in this world for pleasure of Krishna. This is much, much better. Therefore, then Krishna is saying that, one should follow in the footsteps of previous great personalities who have perfected. When Krishna is encouraging Arjun for that, whom he is referring? Somebody's mic is on, it seems. Yeah. So Krishna says that, so Prabhupada in the purport is saying whom is referring to, previous acharyas or previous great saintly personalities. So Prabhupada reveals this confidential part to us that he is referring to Vivaswan, sun god. Sun god also received the knowledge of Bhagavad Gita from Krishna before Arjun. He is a predecessor acharya of Arjun. But sun god did not just go away. Just imagine if sun god would have retired. Oh, chalo, now ho gaya. Abhi I have heard Bhagavad Gita. Abhi no need to do our duty of giving light and heat to the world. Sun god would have retired. Then there would have been big crisis in the world, right? And Krishna had to find out another sun god. Vivaswan chale gaye. भगवद गीता सुन के तो और कोई तो दूसरा अभी चाहिए. So it would have been a very tough situation for the world. But he did not do so. So sun god also heard the knowledge of Bhagavad Gita from Krishna, and every day sun god is going to his company or office, and not retiring. He is continuing to do his duty, but in full Krishna consciousness. It is said that sun god is also one of the partial manifestation of the Lord, and he continues to do his performance of his duties. Every day is rising, doing his duty towards this world, but he is fully devoted to Krishna. So that's how, keeping his knowledge which he had received from Krishna in always in the back of his mind, always in the consciousness, he continues to perform his duties. So Prabhupada says, basically Prabhupada is indicating that Krishna is referring to sun god. Just like sun god performed his duties, and with the full knowledge of Krishna consciousness, similarly he says Arjun, you should also understand the great knowledge of bhakti and also continue to perform your duties. Now, having said this, that one has to work according to the example of previous bona fide devotees, Krishna will explain further why one's action should not be independent. So, Krishna is telling Arjun that he has no attachment to the fruits of his work. Knowing this, Arjun also should fight with faith for Krishna's pleasure. So, liberation is not achieved simply by idle meditation. The liberation is achieved by performing one's duty with faith on Krishna's words and for Krishna's pleasure. This way, Arjun would achieve liberation. In this way, Krishna is wanting Arjun to fight in knowledge of Krishna's transcendental position and as an offering to him. And in this way, Arjun would also follow in footsteps of previous great devotees. So this ends the particular section of this particular chapter, third section. The Krishna is the creator and culminator of all the paths. So now 16th to 24th is the fourth section of this chapter. 16 to 24, that is going to speak about understanding karma on the platform of jnana. How to understand the karma on the platform of jnana. Once one who is enlightened in knowledge, what are his activities, and what are the consequences of his activities. So in this section, in pursuance of Krishna's description of his own work, now Krishna is going to explain how to work karma can be seen as inactivity or karma. So previously Arjun had said that he wished to leave the battlefield and avoid the results of his karma, like a jnani, through inactivity. Generally the jnani is inactive, he doesn't do anything, he simply does study and he simply wants to acquire knowledge. So Arjun also wanted to take to that something similar path, giving up his duty. So Krishna will now show him that no reactions accrue to one who works in transcendental knowledge, and that properly performed karma can thus be seen as non-different than jnana. Means basically, one sense properly performed nishkama karma yoga is equivalent to jnana. Just like a person who is on the platform of jnana, he doesn't accrue any reactions to his activities. Similarly, a person who is acting in nishkama karma yoga for the pleasure of the Lord, he will also become free. Like that. So please recite 16th verse.
Rohit.
Hare Krishna. Am I audible?
Yes.
Evam pravartitam chakram
16th verse.
1616 3.16.
Yeah.
Sorry.
4.16.
Sorry. Yeah. Kim karma kim akarmeti
Kim karma karmeti
evo apyatra mohita
kavayopyatra mohita
te karma pravakshyami
tatte karma
yajñatva mokshayase shubhat. Even the intelligent are bewildered in determining what is action and what is inaction. Now I shall explain to you what action is, knowing which you shall be liberated from all misfortune.
Yes. So Krishna is telling how the intricacies of karmas are difficult to understand. So in this particular verse, two verses, this verse and next verse is telling that even intelligent people are bewildered in determining what is action and what is inaction. So purport Prabhupada says, okay, please read the purport.
Sorry, Prabhu, I was not able to unmute. Purport, action in Krishna consciousness has to be executed in accord with the example of previous bona fide devotees. This is recommended in the 15th verse. Why such action should not be independent will be explained in the text to follow. To act in Krishna consciousness, one has to follow the leadership of authorized persons who are in a line of disciplic succession as explained in the beginning of this chapter. The system of
Yes.
Krishna consciousness.
That's it. So again, Prabhupada is telling, basically carrying on from the previous verse, that one should always act in the leadership of authorized personalities, not act independently, following the footsteps of previous acharyas, act in disciplic succession under the guidance of authorized person. So this is again a very, very important point, that especially it applies for all the fields, but especially in the spiritual life. The spiritual life also always has to be conducted under the guidance of authorized devotees. It is never performed independently based on one's speculative ideas. Otherwise, Prabhupada says ahead, even the most intelligent man will be bewildered regarding the standard actions of Krishna consciousness. So that's why, first of all, it comes out to be, whenever any spiritual topic has to be discussed, anybody wants to speak anything about spiritual topic, first of all, the question is from where he is speaking, from who is his guru, who is his spiritual guide, is he connected to a proper parampara? This is the most important point, actually. So that what happens then his knowledge is bona fide. Otherwise, there can be a lot of speculations into that. So, and what happens that if one is not following a bona fide path, even he may be very intelligent, but he may be bewildered bewildered about the standard actions of Krishna consciousness. So that's why, for this reason, Lord decided to instruct Arjuna in Krishna consciousness directly. Krishna wanted to ensure that authentication is there. Arjuna should receive an authenticated knowledge, authentic knowledge. And this authentic knowledge, the supreme authority is Krishna, and that's why he himself instructed directly. And Prabhupada says, because of the direct instruction of the Lord to Arjuna, anyone who follows in the footsteps of Arjuna is certainly not bewildered. So either one should receive direct instructions from the Lord or through his bona fide representatives in the parampara. Because dharmam tu sakshat bhagavad pranitam. So even Bhagavatam says that dharmam tu sakshat bhagavad pranitam navair vidur. Dharmam tu sakshat bhagavad pranitam navair vidur napi. How that verse is? Can somebody put in Bhagavatam 6th canto? Dharmam tu sakshat bhagavad pranitam navair vidur. So 6:3:19.
Rishayo napi devaha.
Yeah, navair vidur rushayo napi devaha na siddha mukhya asura manusha kutonu vidya dharacharana dyeha. Such great people like rishis and gandharvas, charanas, vidyadharas, even devas, they cannot understand the path of dharma. It has to be directly coming from the Supreme Lord only. So dharma is a law of codes which are coming from the Supreme Lord. No one can manufacture religious principle by his own speculation. Just as one cannot manufacture laws in one's own home. One cannot manufacture state laws in one's own home. One has to follow the authorized codes of government. So those who are, government authorized authorities, they can manufacture the laws, not any ordinary person. Similarly, the Supreme Lord, he gives the laws. So one, by mental speculation, one cannot ascertain what is religion or what is self-realization. So this is what Prabhupada emphasizes. Okay, so please go to 17th verse.
Saumya Prabhu. Okay, Sumit Prabhu.
कर्मणो हि अपि बोधव्यम्
कर्मणो
कर्मणो
हि
हि
अपि
बोधव्यम्
बोधव्यं च कर्मणा
बोधव्यं
बोधव्यं
च
च विकर्मणः
बोधव्यम्
कर्मणश्च
बोधव्यं
बोधव्यम्
गहना कर्मणो गति
गहना कर्मणो गतिः.
Translation: the intricacies of action are very hard to understand. Therefore, one should know properly what action is, what forbidden action is, and what inaction is.
Yes. So many times this question comes that why a particular person is getting what he is getting. Sometimes people may say, मैंने क्या किया था कि मुझे ये मिल रहा है, positively or negatively, anything. But it is very difficult to tell a specific reason why one is getting something what he is getting. Because gahano karmana gati. So we know that Dhritarashtra asked Krishna that why is it that I had to see the death of my 100 children? This is such a painful thing. It is impossible for any father, and especially previous times, this was unprecedented that the children will die before parents. It was like never seen. So Dhritarashtra, that's why I asked Krishna why I had to undergo such a big disaster in my life. So Krishna tells him that some quite few lifetimes before you had destroyed 100 eggs of particular ant, and that's why you had to undergo this thing. So there can be reactions which are coming from very many lifetimes. So in order to get 100 children, Dhritarashtra had to perform pious activities for that many lifetimes, 25, 30, whatever, some say 25, some say 50. So that many lifetimes he had to do accumulate punya. Then he got 100 children, but as a reaction to that, he also had to see his 100 children die. So this way, similarly, this Rishi, which Rishi it was? Mandukya Rishi. He asked also that why I was pierced like this, So do you know this story, right? Vidura's story. So Mandukya Rishi asked, this is a big pastime in the Bhagavatam first canto. So why I had to be pierced? And then Yamaraj tells him that you also pierced ant with the sharp blade, this thing, grass. So you had pierced her, that's why you get reaction. So of course, that's a further pastime. He says, I was small child that time. How can I get reaction like that? And he curses Yamaraj only. And then Yamaraj becomes Vidur like that. So the point here is that karmana, gahano karmana gatihi. It's very intricate and very difficult. So now Krishna could tell him that this is the reason. Or Yamaraj is another authority who knows account of everyone, he can tell. But in general, very difficult to understand. Some reactions we can clearly figure out. Like today, if I am getting dysentery, that means yesterday I ate something undesirable. And we can figure out also, maybe I ate too much sweet rice or something. So that is understandable. So kiska reaction hai ye? This, for this particular reaction, what is the action which I did, that I am getting this. But for some things which are very difficult to understand, So, but at least Krishna says that one should know properly what action is, what forbidden action is, karma, vikarma, and inaction is akarma. So purport Prabhupada says, if one is serious about liberation from material bondage, one has to understand the distinction between action, inaction, and unauthorized actions. So one who has learned perfectly knows that every living entity is an eternal servitor of the Lord, and that consequently one has to act in Krishna consciousness. The entire Bhagavad Gita is directed towards this conclusion. Any other conclusions against this consciousness and its attendant actions are vikarmas or prohibited actions. So, Prabhupada says that the goal of human form of life is to understand that we are eternal servitor of the Lord and our duty is to serve Krishna. So, Bhagavad Gita is directed towards this conclusion, and any conclusions against this consciousness are vikarma, prohibited action. So, but in order to understand this, One cannot understand this on one's own. In order to understand these things, intricacies, one should associate with authorities in Krishna consciousness and learn secret from them. It is as good as learning from the Supreme Lord. So one has to associate with representatives of the Lord, and then from them one can know these things. So basically, karma refers to activities done according to Vedic injunctions. Such activities are generally referred to as karma kanda, and based on performers' material desires, the karma kanda yields reactions, generally good reactions. So karma are the activities based on the Vedas, and generally they bear good reactions. Vikarma means prohibited activities, or the activities which are against the Vedas. Such prohibited actions produce bad reactions and sufferings. Akarma refers to work performed for Krishna's pleasure, that is spiritual activities, or especially those activities which are performed for Krishna's pleasure. Such akarma, it brings no reactions on material level, it brings to spiritual advancement. But in this particular purport, Prabhupada classifies vikarma and karma together. So now, Krishna has introduced the term vikarma in this particular verse, and he returns to the distinction between karma and akarma now. Previously, Krishna spoke only of karma and akarma. In this verse, he introduced the term vikarma also. Now he is going to speak only again about karma and akarma. Karma is a pious action. According to Vedas, vikarma is the impious action, prohibited action, unauthorized action, which is more or less against the injunctions of Vedas. And akarma is spiritual action, which bears no good or bad reactions. Okay, so please read 18th verse.
Swapnil Pro.
कर्मण्य कर्मण यत् पश्येत्
Karmaniya karmaya pashet
अकर्माणि सकर्मया
akarmani chakarmaya
स बुद्धिमान् मनुष्येषु
buddhiman manushyeshu
स युक्तकृत् सन् कर्मकृत्.
sayukta karma.
Translation: one who sees action in action and action in inaction is intelligence among men, and he is in the transcendental position, although engaged in all sorts of activities.
Yeah, so this is typical Upanishadic Jnana language. See action in inaction and inaction in action. So, typical Jnana language. So, Bhagavad Gita, you find everything which is contained in the Vedas. Anywhere else, you get to know all the things. So, who is intelligent? One who sees inaction in action and action in inaction. So, purport Prabhupada says that a person who is devotee, his activities are all performed for Krishna. Therefore, he does not enjoy or suffer any of the effects of the work. So, one who performs activities for Krishna, there is no reaction for it. And in this way, he is the intelligent person. Although he may be engaged in all sorts of various activities for Krishna, but he is not bound by any reaction. He is free from reaction. And that's what is akarma. Now, there are two ways to do akarma. One is don't do any activity at all. And in this way, there is no reaction. So in this way, impersonalist, they give up fruitive activities out of fear, because there may be some reaction which will block their self-realization. So this is the way of impersonalist. If action is because action in this world being some reaction, better don't do any action. And in this way, there won't be any reaction. But then personalist, they understand that it is not possible to be free from action. That's what we discussed before also. That, yeah, third chapter, that one cannot become free from action. It is not possible. So better do right action as a servant of Supreme Lord. And in this way also one becomes free from reaction. If one acts as a servant of Supreme Lord, there won't be any reaction. And in this way, intelligent person, he engages himself in the activities of Krishna consciousness. And in this way, Prabhupada says that because everything is done for Krishna's pleasure, such a personalist, he only enjoy transcendental happiness in the discharge of his activities. So, karma is troublesome because there are some sufferings. Vikarma is troublesome. Inaction is also troublesome because person's mind will not allow him to sit very peacefully. But if a person engages himself in Krishna consciousness, he experiences transcendental happiness. Why? Because he is connecting himself to the source of all happiness. Krishna means, word kru means who is attractive, and na means who is giver of pleasure. So one who acts in Krishna consciousness, he receives great amount of pleasure. Only transcendental happiness purposes. So in this way, his activities no more remain troublesome. His activities are always blissful. Ananda Buddhi Vardhanam. In fact, Srila Prabodhananda Saraswati Thakur also says that Vishwam Purna Sukhayate. Although he is in material world, but he is experiencing great joy and great bliss. Why? Because he is acting for the pleasure of the Lord. So this type of sense of eternal servitorship to Krishna makes one immune from all sorts of reactionary element of work. Yeah. So basically, inaction in action refers to devotional service or activities performed only for Krishna's pleasure. So although one is acting, but there is no reaction, that's why it is said inaction in action. Although action is there, but it is inaction. So in this way, Krishna's servant, they don't receive any material reactions for their service because they act for Krishna. So what's the result of there then? What's the benefit of acting? Huh? No, what's the benefit? Okay, no beer reactions, okay, that is negation of negative.
If it doesn't work, like, so anyway, we will force to work, so they will be.
Okay, कुछ तो काम करना ही पड़ेगा, so कृष्णा के लिए कर लेते हैं. This is also like, negative. What one gains by practicing devotional service?
You will get transcendental happiness. You will
Huh?
get transcendental happiness.
He gets transcendental happiness, okay? That is what he gets, transcendental happiness. Anything else he gets?
Develops love for Krishna.
He develops love for Krishna. Yes.
It
What
purifies
else?
us.
He purifies heart, it becomes purified. Okay. Anything else?
Goes back to spiritual world.
He goes to a spiritual world.
He understands its original position as eternal servitor of
Yeah,
Krishna.
basically he advances in bhakti and he goes closer and closer to the Lord. So that's what is the benefit of acting in Krishna consciousness. One becomes closer and closer to Lord, one develops intimate relationship with the Lord, and in this way one receives transcendental happiness. So this is the benefit of inaction, means Krishna conscious action. Now action in inaction is the opposite. So sometimes we see that sannyasis, they don't have so much transcendental knowledge, but they simply they don't have transcendental knowledge about Krishna. They may have some preliminary knowledge of spiritual life. And in this way, they renounce all the activities. And it appears that they don't perform any work. And in this way, it seems that they will not have any reaction for the work. But as a conditioned soul, one cannot avoid activity or entangling results of that activity. That is not possible. Why? Because every person must act. So if one doesn't act in Krishna consciousness, but he gives up all the activities, but still there are some activities. So because he doesn't act in Krishna consciousness, because he has no knowledge of Krishna. So, and in this way, he performs some activities. So what are those some activities? A sannyasi also must breathe. That is also activity. He must walk. So when he walks, he steps on so many living entities and kills them. While walking, one is killing so many living entities. So in this way, all these activities have no transcendental basis for an impersonalist. And in this way, his reactions are always there for him. One cannot become fully free from reactions unless one acts in Krishna consciousness. So in this way, every soul is unavoidably active. Artificial attempts for inactivity lead to further danger, because the unengaged senses will push a person to act something, do some action. Now, if he doesn't have sense of Krishna consciousness, by default, the senses will push him to act in a material way. And in this way, that's why that verse is there. Yenne arvindaksha vimukta maninas toyesta bhavad avishuddha buddhayah aruyya krishnena param padam tatah patanti adho anadhuta ishmadangrayah. Because they don't respect Krishna's lotus feet, or they don't want to take shelter of Krishna's lotus feet, even if one gives up all types of activities, taking karma sannyas, but still they cannot remain steady in that position, because they are avishuddha buddhayah, their intelligence is not purified by the knowledge of Krishna and the importance of service to Krishna, so they'll be forced to act materially. So anyone who attends spiritual practices while the mind meditates on sense enjoyment will fall down, even if such an unfortunate renunciant appears to be less involved in the world than a devotee. Okay, so 19th verse, please recite. Nineteenth verse.
Yes, Prabhu. Varun Prabhu. I will read this verse. I didn't get a chance last time.
Yeah,
Okay.
sure.
Yasya sarve samarambah
Yasya sarve
समारम्भाः
kama sankalpa varjitah
कामसङ्कल्पवर्जिताः
ज्ञानाग्निदग्ध कर्माणं
ज्ञानाग्निदग्धकर्माणं
tam aho panditam buddhah.
तमाहो पंडितं बुधाः
Translation. One is understood to be in full knowledge, whose every endeavor is devoid of desire for sense gratification. He is said by sages to be a worker for whom the reactions of work have been burned up by the fire of perfect knowledge.
Yeah. So Prabhupada is continuing this thing, that in this verse, Krishna is explaining how a person who has knowledge, proper jnana, his knowledge burns up his actions, karma. Actions in the sense reactions for his actions. So Prabhupada continues the same theme, that person in Krishna consciousness, because he is free from all desires for sense gratification, he has burnt up the reaction of his work by perfect knowledge of his constitutional position as the servant of Supreme Lord. So what is the proof of a person who has burnt up the reactions? Because he has become free from the propensity of sense gratification. So although he may be appearing to act, but he is acting only for the Lord's pleasure, and in this way all his reactions are burnt up. So Prabhupada says that development of this knowledge of eternal servitorship to the Lord is compared to fire. So when one knows that I am eternal servant of Krishna, it's like a fire which burns away all the reactions. Yeah. So in this way, a devotee in transcendental knowledge never desires sense enjoyment, because he knows that Krishna is his Lord and Master, and he himself is the servant of Krishna. So in this way, he is freed from material desires, and that's how his actions are akarma, which produce no reactions. Because he has no material desires, so there are no reactions like that. So it's not only the important the material actions, the important is material desires. If there are no material desires, one may do all sorts of activities, still it will become inaction, akarma, like that. On the other hand, one may give up all the actions, but if one has a lot of material desires, over the period of time, one will be forced to do material actions. And in this way, one will be caught up in the action and reaction cycle. Okay, 19th verse. Please recite. Sorry, 20th verse.
Ashutosh Shankarshan Prabhu.
त्यक्त्वा कर्म फलासङ्गम्
त्यक्त्वा कर्म
कर्मफलासङ्गम्
नित्यतृप्त निराश्रयः
नित्यतृप्तो निराश्रयः
निराश्रयः
कर्मणि अभिप्रावृतोऽपि
कर्मणि
प्राप्तोऽपि
अभिप्रवृत्तोऽपि
नैव किञ्चित् करोति सः
नैव किञ्चित् करोति
करोति
सः।
सः
Translation: Abandoning all attachment to the results of his activities, ever satisfied and independent, he performs no fruitive action, although engaged in all kinds of undertakings.
Yeah. So this is the stage of sadhana, stage of practice. So this term will come in future. I think next chapter it will come. Arurukshu, yoga arurukshu, and yoga arudha. So the stage of practice is called as sadhana or arurukshu stage. So tyaktva karma phala sangam, giving up attachment to the results of his activities. Nitya trupto nirashraya, being ever satisfied and independent. Karmani apipravruttopi, although engaged in all sorts of activities. Naiva kinchit karoti, so he performs no fruitive action. Again, this is in action, in action. A Krishna conscious person acts out of pure love for the Supreme Lord, and therefore he has no attraction for the results of action. Yeah. So Krishna conscious person, because he has no desire to enjoy the fruits of his action, results of his action, and that's why he simply acts for the pleasure of the Lord, and that's why there is no entitlement of the fruits. Okay, he is not bound by karma. So such a unattached person is always free from resultant actions of good and bad. It is though he is not doing anything. So although it appears that he is acting, but in one sense he is not acting, because he is not acting for neither acting out of some material desires, nor is he acting for any results. So this is a karma, or actions without fruitive reactions. Yeah. So in this way, Krishna is again telling to Arjun, don't give up work. We should be satisfied by dutiful work. So rather than giving up work, one should give up attachment to the fruits of work. So this is the stage of sadhana. One who is endeavoring for perfection. He has not become perfectly free. So one who is endeavoring for perfection, these are the activities of sadhaka. Now, the next verse is going to describe, next two verses are going to describe the stage of perfection, siddha or arudha. So please recite 21st verse.
Ayan Prabhu. Okay, Bibhu Prabhu.
Yes. निराशयचितात्मा
निराशीर्यचित्तात्मा
त्यक्त्वा सर्वपरिग्रह
त्यक्त्वा सर्वपरिग्रहः
शरीरं केवलं कर्म
शरीरं केवलं कर्म
पूर्वं नाप्नोति किल्बिषम्
कुर्वन्नाप्नोति किल्बिषम्.
Translation: Such a man of understanding acts with mind and intelligence, perfectly controlled, give up all sense of proprietorships, over his possession and acts only for the bare necessity of life. Thus, working, he is not affected by the sinful reactions.
Yes. So now this is describing the stage of Siddha, who is Yoga Arudha, is who has perfected. What are his symptoms? Nirashir, free from desires. Yata Chittatma, self-control. Tyakta Sarva Parigraha, free from the sense of proprietorship. Shariram Kevala Karma, acts only for the bare necessities of life. He doesn't try to increase the necessities of life. He acts only for the bare necessities of life. Means not for luxuries, only necessities. Kurvan napnoti kilbishan, such a person doesn't incur any sin. So purport Prabhupada says, please read the purport.
Yes, yes. A Krishna conscious person does not expect good or bad result in his activities. His mind and intelligence are fully controlled. He knows that because he is part and parcel of the Supreme, the part played by him as a part and parcel of the whole is not his own activity, but is only being done through him by the Supreme. When the hand moves, it does not move out of its own accord, but by the endeavor of the whole body. A Krishna conscious person is always doubted with the supreme desire, for he has no desire for personal sense gratification. He moves exactly
Yes.
like a
Wait. Yeah. So Prabhupada says here that uh, a devotee, Krishna conscious person, he does not expect any results and his activities and mind are fully controlled. So just like a part acts, not independently, but by the action of the body. So similarly, uh, even though the person may be acting, such a Krishna consciousness person is acting, but he simply acts as an instrument of the Lord. Just like the instrument doesn't act on its own. A pen will not write on its own. But it is when the person who writes, he picks up the pen, then he writes through that. Neither the pen gets the credit for good handwriting. It's the person who writes, he gets the credit also. So same way, a Krishna conscious person, he acts as an instrument of the Lord. And that's why whatever uh, Lord instructs him, he acts according to that. And also for all the good credit, all the results he offers to the Lord. So he doesn't take credit for himself. So Prabhupada gives nice example that when the hand is moving, now this hand is moving. So it's not moving on its own accord, but entire body, or particularly we can say the spirit soul, is the one who is giving power to the hand, to the moving, to move. Similarly, Krishna conscious person is always doubted with the supreme desire. He has no desire for personal sense gratification. So we see that Srila Prabhupada also, when he went to West, he wrote this on the Boston Pier. He wrote this particular poem, wherein he says that this Markine Bhagavad Dharma poem he wrote. So in that he said this, he says that Athacha enecho Prabhu amare nachate kasthera putali yatha nachao se mate. He says that please make me dance, as per just like a puppeteer. A puppeteer makes puppet dance. Oh Lord, similarly, I am simply an instrument in your hands, and let me dance, make me dance as you wish. So nachao, Prabhu nachao se mate. The way you want me to act, let me act. So that was Prabhupada's prayer, that let me just become an instrument. And here also in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna is telling Arjun, Nimitta matram bhava savyasachim. You just become instrument. So that is the stage of pure Krishna conscious person, that he simply acts for the pleasure of the Lord. And that's how he acts only as an instrument for the Lord's wishes. Jesus Christ also says that, let thy be done, not mine. Is this going on still?
Yes.
Yeah. So the Lord Jesus Christ also said, let thy be done, not mine. So Prabhupada says further, just as, so Prabhupada is giving this analogy of machine. A part of the machine acts always in accordance with the machine. But as the machine part also requires oiling and cleansing for maintenance, so a Krishna conscious man also maintains himself by his work, just to remain for action in the transcendental loving service of the Lord. So person acts for his own maintenance so that he can serve better. So one takes care of one's health, one takes care of one's maintenance of the body and various things so that he can serve Krishna in better manner. So in this way, one who acts in this particular spirit, he is immune to all reactions of his endeavor. And Prabhupada gives another example of animal. Just like an animal, a pet dog, he doesn't act out of his own desire. So the master will say, Tommy, get up. And he gets up. Tommy, come here. He comes. Tommy, bring that ball. He'll bring that ball. You see how the dog acts? So very, very much obedient to the master. So, and he's not only just obedient to the master out of duty, he's obedient to the master out of love. So you'll see that the dog will always surround the master and he will wave his tail, isn't it? And he's very, very much affectionate to the master. Sometimes dog shows more affection than the master also. That's what Prabhupada says. Sometimes the proprietor may kill also the animal, but the animal still shows loyalty. So that's the good quality of a dog. That he's very loyal and very affectionate to his master. He's always roams. So that's why Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur also writes this. Sarvasva tomar charane sampiya podechi tomar ghare. Tumi to Thakur tomar kuku boliya jana ho more. Bandiya nikate Amare Palibe, like that it goes on. Very beautiful song wherein he says, Oh Lord, please consider myself to be your dog. And whenever you'll call, I'll come very happily and serve you. And whenever, even if you don't call, still I will guard your house. And I'll be simply satisfied with your remnants. I don't want any other things, for myself. So in this way, Bhaktivinoda Thakur is praying to become a loyal dog of the Lord. So this is another example Prabhupada is giving here also. So 3 examples Prabhupada gave. One example was part of the body. Second example was the part of the machine. Third example is of animal. So in this way, such a person, he has no personal work to perform. He does work for always Krishna. So in this way, Krishna conscious person is fully engaged in self-realization, has very little time to falsely possess any material object. For maintaining body and soul, he does not require unfair means of accumulating money. So Prabhupada says that such a person has, so this is about Tyaktva Sarva Parigraha, free from sense of proprietorship. So he's so busy that he has very little time to falsely possess any material object. Neither he engages into unfair means of accumulating money. He doesn't get involved into unfair means of accumulating money. Those who are not fair means, he doesn't do that. Because he knows that Lord is watching me and Lord will not be happy if I act in an unfair manner. So this is 21st verse. Please read 22nd verse.
Devi Prasad Prabhu.
Yes. Brahmarpanam Brahmahavir.
No, 22nd verse.
Yes.
4.22.
Yes. Yadrichala vasantushto
Yadruchala
Vasantushto
Dvandatito vimarshara
द्वन्द्वातीतो विमत्सरः
Samasiddha ashiddhau cha
समसिद्धासिद्धौ च
kritvapi na nivadhyate.
कृत्वापि न निबध्यते
Translation: He who is satisfied with the gain which comes of its own accord, who is free from duality and doesn't envy, who is steady in both success and failure, is never entangled, although performing actions.
Yes. So these verses are speaking of very highly advanced, perfected devotee who is constantly greedy for Krishna's service. Previous verse and this verse. They are talking of a very highly advanced devotee. So such a devotee considers himself insignificant and gives no importance of anything outside that service. So Prabhupada would quote this, Yadrucha Labha Santushto, Dvandvatito Vimatsaraha. So Yadrucha Labha Santushto is satisfied with whatever comes on its own accord. Dvandvatito means tolerant of dualities, heat, cold, happiness, distress, success, failures. He tolerant of that. Vimatsaraha, free from envy. Sama Siddhav Asadhaucha, steady both in success and failure. Trutva Vipina Vivadhyate is never entangled, although performing actions. Please read purport.
A Krishna conscious person doesn't make such endeavor even to maintain his body. He is satisfied with gains which are obtained of their own accord. He neither begs nor borrows, but he labors honestly as far as is in his power, and is satisfied with whatever is obtained by his own honest labor. He is therefore independent in his livelihood.
Yeah,
He does
that's it. That's it. So this is Prabhupada is giving explanation of Yadrucha Labha Santushto. He works honestly and within whatever within his capacity, whatever he can obtain by his honest work, he is satisfied with that. He is not over ambitious for material things. So whatever he obtains by his honest own endeavors, he is satisfied with that. And in this way, he is independent in his livelihood, because if one wants to go beyond one's capacity, then one has to be very much dependent on others' mercy. And that's why he acts only for the bare necessities as per previous verse also, and is satisfied with whatever comes on his own accord. Then, but Prabhupada says, for the service of the Lord, he can participate in any kind of action without being disturbed by the duality of material world. Although there may be dualities of this material world, but for the service of the Lord, he will do any action. So even if there is a cold season, still he will get up in the morning and continue his morning duties. Even though there may be hot season, still he may cook for the Lord. He will not say, oh no, it is too hot now, I cannot cook for the Lord. Lord, you be happy with yourself now. Not like that. He will still act. Despite dualities, he will still serve the Lord. We see one wonderful example of this is, Mayapur, sometimes you see the floods coming, and even the floods come to temple also. Still devotees go in the boat and they will do offerings and arti for the Lord. Isn't it? So this is like, although such a duality is there, but still a devotee will act. Even in Ukraine, so much war situation is there, but devotees are trying to serve the deities. They are trying to preach. They are trying to distribute books. They are trying to practice their own Krishna consciousness. Although there is so much of calamitous situation, there is enormous calamities are there over there. There is no certainty of life. There is no certainty of their property, but they have understood that ultimate shelter is Krishna only, and they are doing the needful to protect themselves. At the same time, they are also engaged into their own bhakti. They are continuing their process of bhakti. So these are some good examples. And that's why Prabhupada says he is steady both in success and in failure. And Prabhupada says these signs are visible when one is fully in transcendental knowledge. So these are the symptoms of a person who is fully in transcendental knowledge. So now here interestingly, he says that devotee on this platform, he does not even endeavor to beg for his sustenance. He depends on Krishna, and Krishna looks upon such an exalted devotee with great affection. Any example you remember of this? Was not even begging for his maintenance.
Srila Madhavendra.
Madhavendra Puri was like that. When he went to Vrindavan, he did not even beg for his maintenance. He simply used to wait. If somebody gives something, he would take it. If nobody gives anything, he would simply remain absorbed in his bhajan. He was not at all going and begging door to door like that. So that's how Krishna, he saw him with affection. Krishna saw that how much Madhavendra Puri is detached for personal things. He is not interested in personal life, but he simply absorbed in Krishna, and in this way, Krishna personally brought him milk. And near Govardhan Hill, so we know this pastime happened at Govind Kund. So Krishna personally provided for him. Krishna personally looked for his maintenance. So devotional consciousness of such a materially detached, spiritual attached soul is so sweet that even attracts Krishna. That's why Bhakti is Krishna Akarshini. Why Bhakti is Krishna Akarshini? Because a devotee, he doesn't care for himself, but he is always eager to serve Krishna. And that's why Krishna is so much attractive. It's very natural, right? If somebody is doing so much for you without caring for himself, naturally you will feel attached to him and attracted to him. So similarly, Krishna also feels attached to such a devotee. He feels attracted, and we see how Krishna reciprocated so many times with Madhavendra Puri. Krishna gave personally the milk for Madhavendra Puri. Krishna gave service to Madhavendra Puri, very intimate service. Krishna even stole pot of kheer for Madhavendra Puri. Krishna arranged to get sandalwood for Madhavendra Puri, and so that he should not have to labor hard, Krishna even allowed him to apply that chandan to Gopinath only. No need to bring chandan all the way back to Vrindavan. So in this way, Krishna was, so it is not that a devotee who depends on Krishna in this way, he is in loss. Krishna will personally care for him. Krishna will personally maintain him. Krishna will personally look after him. Even an ordinary master, he looks for the servant who is serving very nicely, isn't it? When the ordinary master looks after such a servant, what to speak of a master who is like Krishna, who is most merciful and most powerful? All the resources are within Krishna's hand only, and he is very merciful by nature. So why he will not look after the maintenance of such a person? So Krishna not only looks after the maintenance, Krishna becomes subservient, and he develops personal attachment with this devotee. So endowed with this consciousness, the devotee's mind is free from the dualities of material world. All the day, the conditioned souls see good and bad. Generally, a conditioned soul, he yearns for pleasure and tries to avoid distress. But such a devotee whom we are discussing now, he is beyond such considerations because he sees Krishna's hand in everything that occurs. He sees that how it is merciful handle of the Lord. There is some arrangement of the Lord behind every situation in my life. And in this way, he remains sheltered at the lotus feet of Krishna. Okay. So 23rd verse, please recite.
Pritish Pradhan Prabhu.
Oh, I'm unable to read.
Okay, Shubham Prabhu.
गतसङ्गस्य मुक्तस्य
गतसङ्गस्य मुक्तस्य
ज्ञानवस्थितचेतस्य यज्ञयाचरत कर्म समग्रहं प्रविलीयते. Translation: The work of man
who is the unattached to the mode of material nature, and who is the fully situated in the transcendental knowledge, merge entirely into transcendent.
Yes. So the next Krishna continues to describe the stage of perfection, Siddha. Gata Sangasya Muktasya, unattached to the modes of material nature. Dhyana Chetasa, fully situated in transcendental knowledge. Yajna ya acharataha karma, acts only for the sake of yajna, for the sacrifice, or yajna is Krishna. And samagram praviliyate, he doesn't incur reaction, merges into transcendence. So, purport Prabhupada says, free from the contaminations of the material modes. So, this devotee is completely free from the contaminations of modes. And because he knows his constitutional position as servant of Krishna, he is liberated. And in this way, his mind cannot be withdrawn from Krishna consciousness. His mind cannot be diverted from Krishna consciousness. And that's why any action he does is basically sacrifice. Because his life is devoted for Krishna. So anything he does is only sacrifice only. So his all things are yajna only. Even his eating is like yajna. Like even his sleeping is also for yajna. Why? Because his every action, even though he's resting, but he's resting simply to serve Krishna. And this is the purpose of yajna. So that's why his sleeping is also yajna. Even his bodily maintenance is yajna. Even his any action he does, whatever action he does, walking, talking, all is part of yajna. Why? Because every of his action is aimed at satisfying Krishna. So that's how he has no reactions. So in this way, Prabhupada translates yajnaya as for the sake of yajna. So when our work is performed as a sacrifice for Krishna, then is automatically it is transcendental work, even though it may be apparently material work. But if it is done for the pleasure of Krishna, then it is basically yajna. It is actually devotional service. So in this way, Krishna is describing such a person's actions. Okay, 24th verse, please recite.
Anadi Govind Prabhu.
Yes. ब्रह्मार्पणं ब्रह्मार्वी
Brahmarpanam
Arpanam Brahmavi
ब्रह्मार्णो ब्रह्मणारुतं
Brahmarno Brahmanatam
Brahmanam
ब्रह्मैव तेन गन्तव्यम्
Brahmaiva Tena
Brahmaiva Tena
Gantavyam
Gantavyam
ब्रह्मकर्म समाधिना.
Brahma
Brahma
Karma
Karma
Samadhina.
Translation:
Samadhina.
A person who is fully absorbed in Krishna consciousness is sure to attain the spiritual kingdom because of his full contribution to spiritual activities, in which the consummation is absolute and that which is offered is of the same spiritual nature.
Yes. So everything becomes Brahman for him. Brahmarpanam, Brahma Havir. So his oblations are spiritual, his instruments are spiritual. Havir is instruments. Arpanam, Brahmarpanam is spiritual. Brahmagno, offered into spiritual fire. Brahmana Hutam, by a spiritual person. Brahmaiva Tena Gantavyam. In this way, when his whole existence is spiritualized, he goes where? Spiritual world. Brahmaiva Tena Gantavyam. Gantavya क्या है उनका? Spiritual world. Brahmaiva. Brahma Karma Samadhina. How? By being absorbed in spiritual activities. So not only the activities of such a person become spiritualized, his everything surrounding becomes spiritualized. So that's how all his possessions are spiritual, because they are instruments for his service to the Lord. He himself is spiritual, and his activities are all spiritual, and ultimately his destination is also spiritual world. So in this way, yajna in the spiritual consciousness, it leads to spiritual goal. So Prabhupada says in the purport that a conditioned soul is entangled in material contamination and he's sure to act in the material atmosphere. But he has to get out of such material environment. And what is the process to get out of material environment? Because if one acts in the material consciousness, surely he's simply going to remain in material environment. But if he has to get out of the material environment, that process is called Krishna consciousness. By Krishna consciousness, one can come out of the material environment. So Prabhupada gives example, just as a person has got disorder of bowels or dysentery or something. So how he gets dysentery? Because of too much milk, sweets or milk eating. But same milk, when it is transformed in the form of curd, it becomes the curative measure. So Srila Narad Muni in the first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, he tells this to Vyasadeva. This is called a therapeutic treatment. Therapeutic treatment is what? The same item which caused you the disease, when it is transformed, the same item becomes the cause of freedom from disease, or it acts as a medicine for the disease. So by milk, overtaking of the milk or milk products, one gets dysentery. The same dysentery can be cured by another milk product, that is curd. Like that. So this is very famous treatment in Ayurveda, therapeutic treatments. Even in allopathy also to some degree it works with the similar principles. Like that. So generally also somebody gets poison. What is given?
Poison.
Another poison is given, because poison only cuts another poison, right? So same way, the karma in this material world causes bondage. Same karma, when it is done for Krishna, it causes liberation. This is called as therapeutic treatment. The same karma, if it is done for the pleasure of the Lord with proper consciousness, Krishna consciousness, that karma frees one from the material world. So ordinary material karma binds one to material world. Krishna conscious karma frees one from material world. And this process is, Prabhupada says, is generally known as yajna, or activities simply meant for the satisfaction of Vishnu. So Prabhupada gives a very powerful statement. The more the activities of material world are performed in Krishna consciousness or for Vishnu only, the more atmosphere will become spiritualized. So this is the key for spiritualization of the atmosphere. One doesn't have to give up material world, but one has to do activities of material world, in Krishna consciousness. They should be done for the pleasure of Lord Vishnu. So, because the word Brahma means spiritual. Further, Prabhupada says everything that exists is situated in Brahma Jyoti, which is effulgence of the Lord. But when that Brahma Jyoti is covered by illusion or sense gratification, it is called material. So potentially everything is spiritual only, but when it is covered by Maya, it becomes material. What do we mean by Maya? When it is used for sense gratification, then it is Maya. So everything is spiritual, but it depends on how it is used. If it is used for Krishna's pleasure, it is spiritual. If it is used for sense gratification, it is material. So this material veil means parda, curtain, can be removed at once by Krishna consciousness. Thus, the offering for the sake of Krishna consciousness, consuming the agent of such an offering or contribution, the process of consumption, the contributor and the result are all combined together, Brahman or absolute truth. You understand this concept? So when one performs yajna for the Supreme Lord, even the instruments of that yajna are also Brahman. Why? Because they are used for the Supreme Lord. Even the ghee one pours for that yajna is also spiritual. Even the performer of the yajna is also spiritualized because he is doubting himself in Krishna. The yajna itself is spiritual. The yajna ingredients become spiritual. And the process of yajna is also spiritual. So in this way, everything is spiritualized. Sarvam khalu idam brahma. So in this way, Prabhupada says that's a process of consumption, the contributor, the result is also Brahman. and then offering of contribution, consuming agent. So all these things become spiritualized. So the absolute truth covered by Maya is called matter, but the matter doubted for cause of the absolute truth regains its spiritual quality. Krishna consciousness is the process of covering the illusory consciousness into Brahman or the Supreme. When the mind is fully absorbed in Krishna consciousness, it is said to be in samadhi or trance. Anything done in such transcendental consciousness is called yajna or sacrifice of the absolute. So sometimes we think that yajna means only fire sacrifice. No, any service done for the Lord, that is yajna. Any activity done for the pleasure of the Lord, that is spiritual, and that is also yajna. And that's how, all activities become yajna if they are done in Krishna consciousness. It may not be that yajna doesn't mean only some kind of fire sacrifice. That is one type of yajna. But there are various types of yajna that Krishna is going to explain from the next verse onwards. Like that. So the word Brahma means spiritual. So the Lord is spiritual. The rays of his transcendental body are also called Brahmajyoti, spiritual. And that's how yajna is not simply a fire sacrifice, but any activity performed to attain certain goal. That is also called yajna. Yeah. So in this way, work done in transcendental knowledge and performed as a sacrifice along with its result is absolute, because all work done for Krishna's pleasure produces no karma and is therefore transcendental. The contribution, the process of consumption, the contributor and the results are all necessary aspects of any sacrifice. The goal of our sacrifices and other practices that Krishna will now list is the pleasure of the absolute truth. So ultimately the goal of all these things is the pleasure of the Supreme Lord, and they all advance a practitioner in transcendental knowledge, the goal of which is the devotional service is Krishna. So further now Krishna is going to explain different types of yajna, but ultimate goal is to simply satisfy Krishna through that. So we'll stop here. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavad Gita.
Jai.
Jai. Okay, there are some questions here. Karmaneva Dikaraste. Verse last word is akarmani. What is that? Means not doing any prescribed duty, inaction, which is sinful. And verse 428, one word is akarmani. Means inaction, work without reaction. It's very interesting to know the usage of the word according to the theme. Yeah, the word akarma can be used as inaction, and word akarma also is used for transcendental action. Why? Because both ways there is no reaction. That's why the words are synonymous to each other. But in a particular way of action, it is different. You understand? Spiritual activity is also akarma. No activity is also akarma, because both don't bring any reaction. But akarma, the person who doesn't do any activity, that is like no activity at all. But there is a spiritual activity which also don't bring reaction. Yeah. Then Prabhupada says in the purport of 4.23, the resultant reactions of all such are certainly merged into transcendent. Yeah, devotees are little allergic to word merging, right? They feel merging means merging in impersonal Brahma Jyoti. That's why if you will study ahead Ishopanishad, wherein Prabhupada says what real merging is. Merging means becoming one with Krishna in terms of his intentions. So Krishna wants to have various pastimes, and when devotee merges, his intention is to assist Krishna in his pastime. So that is also into merging. So merge into transcendence means his activities also become transcendental. So there is a qualitative merging. It is not that necessarily one has to become homogeneous. So the devotees generally have allergy to this word merging, but the word merging comes a lot in Bhagavad Gita as well as Bhagavatam also. So merging is not necessarily the impersonal understanding of merging, that you just merge into Brahma Jyoti, but one becomes qualitatively one with the Lord. Means what? Lord is spiritual and one is spiritual. Just like the desires of the family are the same. Hopefully, the desires of all the family members are the same. They are working with the same desires. So, if one says that one is merged into the family, doesn't mean that he has become homogeneous with the family. There is no existence, separate existence of that person. That means his intentions and desire are same as the intentions and desires of his family. Like, for example, family may have some business. A person also contributes and becomes fully absorbed in maintaining and advancing that business. That means he has merged into family business. Doesn't mean that he has lost his identity. No, he may also do singing, he may also do other things, but his whole intentions are devoted for that particular business. So that is also merging. So merging doesn't necessarily mean impersonal merging, wherein one loses one's identification. Everything is spiritual, then why such distinctions as superior energy and inferior energy? There is no distinction for Krishna. Superior energy, inferior energy means there is no difference for Krishna. Inferior energy comes into picture only when you forget Krishna. So it is said that when we face towards the sun, so we see the light. When we face away from the sun, we see the shadow. So that's how it is. When we are using everything for Krishna, there is no inferior energy at all. There is all superior energy only, But when we are go away from Krishna, then inferior energy comes into picture, like that. Yeah, our perception, because it is for conditions. So, but that's like Prabhupada gives example for a electrical engineer. There is no hot electricity and cold electricity. He uses the same electricity for various purposes. Really, for Krishna, everything is spiritual only, But when a living entity wants to forget him, then he uses one of his energy to bewilder that living entity. Like that is called Maya. So that's why Prabhupada says this. When the Brahman covered, basically, when a living entity's vision is covered, Brahman cannot be covered by Maya. When the living entity's vision of the Brahman is covered by Maya, that is becomes matter. Otherwise, it is spirit only, like that. In purport 4.24, Prabhupada says that the absolute truth covered by Maya is matter. I am unable to understand this. Yeah, so absolute truth cannot be covered by Maya. It covers our vision. Just like the cloud cannot cover the sun, but to our vision, it seems that cloud is covered by covering the sun. Actually, the cloud is so small, sun is so big. How can cloud cover the sun? But our vision towards the sun is covered by cloud. But to us, it appears that we say ना that ये जो बादल है उन्होंने सूरज को ढक लिया है. बादल कभी सूरज को ढक नहीं सकते. But to our vision, it appears like that. And that's what causes darkness. The same way, when the absolute truth to our vision is covered by Maya, it appears as matter. So is it that offerings done in Krishna consciousness are also absolute truth? Yes, that's what is Brahma. Oh, verse ka yahi to essence hai. Now, that's why Prabhupada used to say, same mic, when it is used for, speaking, material things, mundane things, it is material. Same mic, when it is used for Krishna service, it is spiritual. So mic is no more material because it is used for service of Krishna. It is spiritual now. So that's what is, the whole concept is this only. When we are talking this verse, what verse we discuss now, Brahma Havid, ये क्यों बताया वही बताया. This is the concept which Prabhupada is speaking. Yeah. So when we say this, Brahmar Brahma Havir, Brahmag, Brahmana Hutam, Brahmaivate na Gantavyam, Brahma Karma Samadhina. इसका मतलब क्या है? Whatever is employed in Krishna service, that is spiritual. Even the so-called material things like laptop, mobile, charger, prasadam, foodstuffs, if whatever is used in Krishna service, that is all spiritual. So that's what is the seed of Yukta Vairagya principle, which we understand that when it is used for Krishna, then it is no more material. Nirbandhe Krishna Sambandhe. When one sees everything in relation with Krishna, it loses its material nature because it is not material. everything is potentially Brahma means, yeah, everything is originally spiritual. But when it is used in Krishna's, if it is not used for Krishna, then it becomes material. It's like that. Because ultimately, Bhumi, Rapo, Analo, Vayu, Kam, Mano, Buddhi, Revacha, Ahankare, Bhinna, Me, Krishna says these are my energies. They are Krishna's energies only, one energy, another energy. But when it is living entity, when he uses it for his own personal sense gratification, then it appears to him as material, like that. So that's how everything is potentially spiritual. In that same purport, 2.47, Srila Prabhupada says, inaction is sinful. So, I did not understand the question.
The context was like not working.
Yeah. The inaction which means not at all acting, that is sinful. But the inaction which means acting without reactions, that is not sinful, that is transcendental action. So that's why the inaction has got two meanings. One is not acting at all and acting without material desires for pleasure of Krishna. That is also called as inaction. But that inaction which is done for pleasure of Krishna, that is not sinful. But when the inaction is no acting at all, that is sinful. Spiritual Brahma, absolute. Spiritual Brahma. Brahma means spiritual. Yeah. Brahma means spiritual. No? That's what Brahman means. The literal meaning of word Brahman is spiritual. Brahman doesn't mean always Brahma Jyoti. Brahman has got many meanings. Even a Brahmana is called as Brahman. Brahma is also called as Brahman. Jiva is also called Aham Brahmasmi. Spirit soul is also called as Brahman. So basically, Brahman means spiritual. Now, why Brahmana is called as Brahman? Because he's always engaged in spiritual activities. Brahman achariti ti Brahmana. So that's why he's also called as Brahman, because he's spiritualized fully. Why Brahma is called as spiritual? Because he's also absorbed in Lord always. So that's why he's also called as Brahman. Like that. So basically, meaning of word Brahma is spiritual. That's it. What is meant by when we say that microphone has become spiritual when it is used for the service? Does it loses its material qualities? It is spiritualized. Spiritualized means, because everything is actually denoted by its use. अगर microphone है पर उसका कभी use for voice transmission, if it is not used, then what is the use of its microphone? So use is the particular characteristic of a particular object. Now, when the use is for matter, it is material. When the use is for spiritual, it is spiritual, like that. Although the microphone may not become exactly Satchidananda, but it is spiritualized. And Prabhupada used to give example, just like the iron rod is put into fire, it becomes fiery. So it acts as good as fire, because ultimately everything is characterized by its use. So if you touch the iron rod which is put into fire, it will burn your hand, isn't it? So it acts as good as fire, isn't it? Similarly, when the use of the microphone is for Krishna's service, it is acting as spiritual only. Right. Okay. So I hope this answers all of your queries. You had put some question before? I think because it got lost here somewhere. I don't know. Any other questions got lost? Yeah.
We were discussing it from it's to 4 days. Inaction, proper inaction. It's to 4 days. I just happened to come across one lecture where it was mentioned that let's say a person is trying, but due to weakness of heart, he's not he's engaged in some activity which is not favorable to devotion service. And there it was said that Jiv Goswami that he can offer that also to Lord. Like not exactly offering that dushkarma, but the attachment that he has for that dushkarma. If he offer that to Lord, that becomes spiritual.
That's what Prabhupada told one drunkard. He said, I cannot give up drinking. He said, you see the taste of this drink, liquor as Krishna. In this way, slowly you'll be able to give up. Because ultimately Krishna is the source of even liquor also. So if you see, now he is so conditioned that he cannot give up drinking. Then he can at least see Krishna there, and slowly he'll become purified and give up drinking. That doesn't mean that simply by drinking he'll go back to God. That won't happen. So he'll become purified because it's nonetheless remembering Krishna, whether he's drinking or whatever. So it is synonymous. So Prabhupada has taken it from that only. So that's what one remembers Krishna. Yena kirena prakarena mana Krishna niveshayet. That's what Rupa Goswami gives as a principle. So even though somebody is conditioned, but if he somehow remembers Krishna and tries to become Krishna conscious, slowly he'll become purified, and then he will be freed from all that propensities of that sinful activity.
Because I was wondering, this is like being suppose like a book, a big book. Now I can let's say that will give license for many people. So how to understand this?
So that's why the honesty is the most important policy. One should be honest also. One cannot take disadvantage of such mercy of the Lord. One should be honest. So what is within one's capacity, one should do it fully. Something which is beyond one's capacity, then that's how these things are their hope for that person. Right. So that's why, because this person was not at all ready, able to give up drinking, so Prabhupada said, okay, you begin with this. We start with 4 evolutive principles, but आपको नहीं हो रहा है तो at least इधर से चालू करो. Start something. Take one step at least towards Lord. Okay, you cannot immediately follow 4 evolutive principles, but you start something. You remember Krishna, you serve Krishna, you engage in Krishna service. Slowly you will come to the platform following 4 evolutive principles. Right. That one can take one step at least. That's the hope. But if one says that nahi, if somebody who is able to follow, he says nahi, ye bhi chalta hai na. It is like somebody saying that, hey, मैं 10th standard में, but 5th का भी exam दिया तो चलेगा ना, क्या problem? Hey, okay, but you are not 5th standard, you are 10th standard. So you give exam of 10th standard, and 10th standard exam is little tough for you. But you have to study nicely and give your exam. Don't say that, hey, इनका भी पेपर तो 5th standard का पेपर भी तो है ना, वो भी तो exam है, वो भी exam में ही देता फिर ऐसे थोड़ी होगा. You are 10th standard, you follow 10th standard. Somebody is 5th standard, okay, he can give exam of 5th standard. Like that. So little stretch one has to do. One cannot say that, okay, let me take comfort. So one has to stretch little bit beyond one's, whatever is one's things that this much I can do, to little extra out of it. That's what exam is. In exam also we see some questions are very easy, some questions are difficult. So generally the exam is done in such a way that you can easily pass. But if you want to score good marks, then you have to have some tough questions. So that way. So generally, we have to do little extra than what is our general understanding of what I can do, because that helps us to go ahead further and score good marks in our bhakti. Everyone says नहीं हम तो ये नीचे का अलाउड है ना, तो मैं वही देता हूँ, पर आप फिर से भी 5th standard में जाना पड़ेगा आपको. You cannot be on 10th standard, then you'll become 5th standard boy. All right. Yes. Thank you.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
और उसमें